There is a moment after someone finally walks away from the person who hurt them, when the silence becomes more painful than the relationship ever was. The messages stop. The arguments disappear. Nobody is demanding explanations. Nobody is punishing them with silence. Nobody is making them question their worth. They should feel free, but they do not. Instead, they stare at their phone. They replay old conversations. They remember the rare nights when everything felt perfect. And eventually, a dangerous thought enters their mind. Maybe it was not really that bad. Then another. Maybe this time will be different. And before long, the person they once begged to escape becomes the person they are desperate to hear from again. From the outside, it appears irrational. If someone repeatedly broke your trust, humiliated you, abandoned you, manipulated you, or made you afraid, why would you return? If a fire burned your skin, why would you voluntarily step back into it? But human attachment does not operate according to logic alone. It operates through memory, fear, familiarity, hope, and conditioning. And the darkest reason people return to those who hurt them is not simply that they still love them, it is that the person who created their pain also became the person their mind associated with relief. The wound and the medicine were given the same face. Before we go deeper, join Mind Trap, because understanding this mechanism may completely change the way you see toxic attachment. Imagine two relationships. In the first, affection is consistent. You know where you stand. Kindness is normal. Apologies are sincere. Love does not disappear whenever you make a mistake. The relationship may not be perfect, but it feels emotionally predictable. In the second relationship, affection arrives without warning. One day, the person makes you feel irreplaceable. The next day, they become cold. They withdraw. They insult you. They disappear without explanation. You are left wondering what you did wrong. Then, just as you begin losing hope, they return. They apologize. They become gentle again. They promise that nobody understands them like you do. Suddenly, the suffering stops. And the relief feels enormous. Not because their affection has become more valuable, but because it arrived after deprivation. A glass of water is pleasant when you are comfortable. The same glass of water feels like salvation when you've been dying of thirst. This is the power of intermittent reinforcement. A reward delivered unpredictably can produce remarkably persistent behavior because the mind never knows when the next reward will arrive. The comparison is not perfect, but it helps explain why unpredictability can keep someone emotionally invested. They are no longer responding only to love. They are responding to uncertainty. Every ignored message creates anxiety. Every unexpected apology releases that anxiety. Every cruel episode pushes them toward despair. Every affectionate reunion pulls them back into hope. The person begins waiting for the loving version to return. They tell themselves the cruelty is temporary. They believe the kindness reveals the person's real identity. But what if both versions are real? What if the tenderness is not evidence that the cruelty has ended? What if it is simply another stage of the pattern? Psychologists Donald Dutton and Susan Painter studied emotional attachment in abusive relationships through what became known as traumatic bonding theory. Their work proposed that two conditions were especially important: a power imbalance and intermittent mistreatment. The stronger person dominates. The other person begins changing their behavior to prevent punishment. But the abuse is not continuous. It is interrupted by affection, calm, remorse, or promises. Those peaceful moments do not necessarily weaken the attachment. Under certain conditions, they may strengthen it, because relief becomes connected to the person who caused the fear. This is where people misunderstand the term trauma bond. It does not simply mean two people went through something painful together. It refers to an attachment formed within an abusive power dynamic, often maintained through alternating mistreatment and reward. Not every painful relationship is a trauma bond. Not every breakup and reconciliation is abuse. But when fear, control, dependency, and intermittent affection exist together, the attachment may become extremely difficult to break. The person is not just remembering romance, they are waiting for relief. Spend enough time with an unpredictable person and you begin studying them like weather. You notice the way they close a door, the tone of a single word, the length of time between messages, the movement of their eyes, the silence before an argument. You learn to detect emotional storms before they arrive. This can look like intimacy. You know what they are thinking before they speak. You know what will calm them. You know what subjects must be avoided. You know when an apology is required, even when you did nothing wrong. But this is not always emotional closeness. Sometimes it is surveillance created by fear. Your attention becomes organized around the other person's moods. Your nervous system begins treating their emotional condition as essential information. When they are calm, you can breathe. When they are angry, your entire body becomes alert. When they withdraw, your mind searches desperately for the mistake that caused it. Eventually, you become an expert in their emotions, while slowly becoming a stranger to your own. In a 2022 study involving 258 Israeli women who had left violent partners, psychologist Yael Lahav examined identification with the aggressor and the perceived likelihood of returning. One factor stood out: becoming hypersensitive to the perpetrator. The more intensely participants remained tuned to the former partner's feelings, needs, and emotional state, the more difficult permanent separation could become. This does not mean survivors secretly wanted the abuse. It means attention itself had been trained toward the person who represented both danger and possible relief. Even after physical distance is created, the internal monitoring can continue. Is he angry? Is she suffering? What if they need me? What if they finally understand? What if leaving makes everything worse? The relationship may be over in the outside world, while continuing inside the mind. Attachment is often described as the system that pulls human beings towards safety. When a child is afraid, the child searches for a trusted caregiver. When an adult feels threatened or abandoned, they may seek comfort from an intimate partner. But what happens when the attachment figure is also the source of fear? The system receives two conflicting commands: get away from this person, and at the same time, do not lose this person. Distance creates safety, but it also activates abandonment. Closeness provides temporary comfort, but it restores the danger. The result is an emotional trap in which neither staying nor leaving feels safe. This may be especially intense for people whose earlier relationships taught them that love was inconsistent. Perhaps affection had to be earned. Perhaps silence meant punishment. Perhaps conflict was followed by sudden warmth. Perhaps they grew up believing that being needed was the same as being loved. This does not mean everyone with a difficult childhood will choose abusive relationships. Research connecting attachment insecurity and intimate partner violence is complex, and findings are not perfectly consistent. Childhood does not write an unavoidable destiny, but early experiences can influence what later feels familiar. And familiarity is frequently mistaken for compatibility. A calm person may feel boring. A reliable person may seem emotionally distant. Peace can feel suspicious when the nervous system was trained inside unpredictability. Chaos, however, feels recognizable. The person may say, "I have never felt a connection like this before." That may be true, but intensity is not always intimacy. Sometimes intensity is the emotional sensation produced when hope and fear are activated at the same time. There is another force operating beneath the surface: cognitive dissonance. Human beings experience psychological discomfort when two deeply held beliefs contradict each other. This person loves me, and this person deliberately hurts me. Holding both ideas at once can become unbearable, so the mind searches for an explanation. Maybe they had a difficult childhood. Maybe they are stressed. Maybe they are afraid of being abandoned. Maybe the betrayal did not mean anything. Maybe the insults were said in anger. Maybe I provoked them. Maybe I expected too much. Some of these explanations may contain truth. People do carry wounds. Stress can influence behavior. Fear can cause people to react badly. But an explanation is not the same as an excuse. Understanding why somebody harms you does not make the harm safe. Yet blaming yourself can create a strange illusion of control. If their behavior is entirely their choice, you cannot control what happens next. But if you caused it, perhaps you can prevent it. You can become quieter, more patient, more attractive, less demanding, more forgiving. You can study every mistake and perfect your behavior. Self-blame is painful, but it offers a false bargain. If I become good enough, the person I first met will return permanently. That bargain keeps people trapped for years. They are not only protecting the relationship, they are protecting the meaning of everything they sacrificed for it. Admitting the truth may require them to accept that the promises were empty, that the future they imagined may never arrive, that the person they defended to everyone else was hurting them all along. That love did not transform the situation, that patience did not purchase safety. Returning allows the story to remain unfinished, and as long as it remains unfinished, hope survives. This is why closure can be so dangerous. People often believe closure means receiving the perfect explanation. They return for one final conversation, one final apology, one final night together. They believe certainty will release them. But the person who created the confusion may not be capable of providing clarity. Instead, the conversation produces another promise, another emotional confession, another emergency, another reason to stay. The search for closure becomes a hidden doorway back into the cycle. And so the first part of the trap is complete. Pain creates fear. Distance creates craving. Reunion produces relief. Relief is mistaken for love. The person returns, not necessarily because the relationship has changed, but because returning temporarily ends the distress of leaving. Yet conditioning is only half of the prison. The remaining walls are built from investment, identity, isolation, and the terrifying uncertainty of beginning again. When people remember a harmful relationship, they rarely remember every moment with equal clarity. Memory is not a security camera. It reconstructs, it selects, it edits. After enough time has passed, the nervous system may stop reproducing the full intensity of an insult, a threat, or a betrayal. But the beautiful moments remain available. The first conversation, the private jokes, the promises made at midnight, the rare apology that appeared completely sincere, the moment the cruel person finally cried and seemed human again. Pain begins losing detail. Hope begins gaining color. And slowly, the mind stops comparing the relationship with peace. It begins comparing loneliness with the relationship's best moments. That is an unfair comparison. The mind does not ask, was I consistently safe? It asks, what if the good version finally returns? Many people are not attached to who someone consistently is. They are attached to who that person occasionally becomes. The affectionate version, the vulnerable version, the version who admits everything and promises change, the version that appears after the damage has already been done. This creates a relationship with potential rather than reality. Reality exists in patterns, potential exists in isolated moments. Reality asks what the person repeatedly does. Potential asks what they might become under perfect conditions. And potential can survive almost anything. Every apology becomes evidence. Every tear becomes transformation. Every calm week is treated as proof that the pattern has ended. But genuine change is not measured by the intensity of an apology. It is measured by consistent behavior maintained over time, especially when the person is frustrated, challenged, or denied control. Words reveal what someone wants you to believe. Patterns reveal how they actually live. The person returning is often not returning to the relationship that existed. they are returning to the future they were promised. Psychologist Carol Rusbolt's investment model helps explain why commitment can survive declining satisfaction. People do not evaluate relationships only by happiness. Commitment can also be influenced by perceived alternatives and the size of their investments. Time, money, children, shared property, social circles, private memories, religious commitments, public promises, years spent defending the relationship, a version of the self built around making it work. The more someone invests, the more expensive leaving begins to feel. They are not only losing a person, they may be losing a home, routine, identity, community, and imagined future. Leaving can feel like declaring emotional bankruptcy. The mind begins calculating everything already spent. I gave them 10 years. I forgave too much to leave now. My family warned me, and I defended them. I cannot let everything I endured mean nothing. But suffering does not become meaningful simply because it continues. 10 painful years are not rescued by giving the relationship an 11th. Past investment cannot guarantee future return. Still, the mind hates accepting a loss. So it remains loyal to a collapsing structure because walking away would force it to acknowledge how much has already disappeared. This is one reason relationship cycling can continue even when satisfaction is low. Research on-again, off-again relationships has found that cycling is associated with greater uncertainty, lower satisfaction, and more constraints against permanently ending the relationship. The cycle does not necessarily continue because the relationship is working. Sometimes it continues because leaving has become complicated. In 1920, Sigmund Freud described what he called the repetition compulsion, the puzzling tendency to repeat distressing patterns even when repetition appears to produce suffering rather than pleasure. Modern psychology does not treat this century-old idea as a complete scientific explanation for returning to harmful relationships, but it remains a useful lens. Sometimes people return because part of them is attempting to rewrite an old ending. If they can finally make the emotionally unavailable person choose them, perhaps it will heal every earlier rejection. If they can transform the cruel person through patience, perhaps it will prove they were always worthy of love. If they can prevent abandonment this time, perhaps they will no longer feel like the powerless person they once were. But the attempt to repair an old wound through a similar relationship can reproduce the wound instead. The characters change, the script remains. This is why people sometimes leave one destructive relationship only to feel strangely attracted to another person with the same emotional pattern. The face is different. The uncertainty feels the same. What they call chemistry may partly be recognition, a familiar rhythm, a familiar distance, a familiar fight to be chosen. Healthy love may initially feel less intoxicating because it does not force them to earn every moment of affection. There is no emotional puzzle to solve, no disappearing person to chase, no rival to defeat, no cold silence to reverse. Nothing has to be rescued. For someone conditioned by instability, that peace can feel empty. But peace is not emptiness. It is simply what connection feels like when fear is no longer producing the intensity. When a person exits an unpredictable relationship, they may expect immediate relief. Instead, they may experience grief, anxiety, insomnia, obsessive thoughts, and powerful urges to make contact. This can feel like proof that leaving was a mistake. It is not necessarily proof of anything except attachment and disruption. The routine has been broken. The familiar source of relief is gone. The future is uncertain. The mind begins searching for the fastest way to end the discomfort. That fastest way is usually contact. One message, one look at their profile, one meeting to talk. And the moment the person responds warmly, the distress decreases. That relief reinforces the return. The cycle begins again. This experience is sometimes described as withdrawal. That metaphor can be useful, but it should not be turned into fake neuroscience. A harmful relationship is not literally identical to substance addiction. The important point is simpler. repeated cycles of distress and relief can train behavior. If contact repeatedly ends separation anxiety, the urge to make contact becomes stronger. Breaking the pattern means learning that distress can rise, peak, and eventually fall without returning to the person who caused it. The opposite of a trauma bond is not hatred. Hatred can keep attention chained to the same person. The opposite is clarity. Clarity begins when promises are separated from patterns. Do not record only what they said after hurting you. Record what they repeatedly did. Write the timeline, the insult, the betrayal, the punishment, the apology, the peaceful period, the next incident. A written record protects reality when nostalgia begins editing it. The second step is to stop expecting the source of confusion to provide closure. Closure may never arrive as a confession. Some people will never admit what they did. Others will admit everything when they fear losing access, then deny it once control is restored. You do not need their agreement to believe your own experience. The third step is to rebuild alternative sources of regulation and safety. Friends, family, therapy, support groups, meaningful work, exercise, spiritual practice, creative purpose, financial independence, a home in which silence does not feel like punishment. The goal is not merely to remove a person, it is to build a life that no longer requires them as the only source of comfort. The fourth step is understanding that missing someone is not an instruction. You can miss a person and still refuse their pattern. You can remember their kindness without denying their cruelty. You can love someone and recognize that closeness with them is unsafe. Emotions provide information. They do not always provide direction. And if physical violence, threats, stalking, or coercive control are present, the priority is not winning one final argument. It is safety. A trusted domestic violence service can help someone create a plan suited to their actual circumstances. The most dangerous moment may be when the abusive person realizes they are losing control, so the exit should not be designed for dramatic closure. It should be designed for survival. People return to those who hurt them for many reasons. Love, fear, children, money, isolation, memory, shame, hope. A nervous system trained to associate one person with both terror and relief. No single theory can explain every return. And returning does not prove someone is weak, foolish, or secretly enjoys suffering. Leaving a harmful attachment is rarely one clean decision. It can be a process of separation, return, growing awareness, and another attempt. But the darkest mechanism beneath many of these cycles is brutally simple. The person did not only create the wound, they positioned themselves as the cure. They caused the anxiety, then offered relief. They destroyed certainty, then sold another promise. They reduced self-worth, then gave small doses of validation. They made the world outside the relationship feel impossible, then called dependence love. But relief is not the same as safety. Intensity is not the same as intimacy. Familiarity is not the same as destiny. An apology is not the same as change. And love that requires someone to repeatedly abandon themselves is not love becoming difficult. It is a pattern consuming them. The cycle begins to die when they stop asking, "Do I still love this person?" and begin asking, "Who do I become when I am with them? Do I become peaceful or constantly alert? Do I become more honest or more silent? Do I become more myself or do I disappear to keep them comfortable? Because sometimes the person you miss is real, but the future you imagined with them is not. And walking away does not mean the attachment was meaningless. It means you finally understood its cost. The door may still call to you. The memories may still soften. Hope may still whisper that this time will be different. But healing begins when you recognize the voice and keep walking anyway.